Hey everybody, this is PJ Riley from Lancaster Archery out here at the Eastern Traditional Archery Rendezvous where we're talking about all things traditional this weekend. Had a chance to catch up with Matt Zernzak. Matt just made a video. It's called The Push. It's probably more correctly classified as a film, but it's called The Push. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. He goes through a lot of traditional things. One of the traditional subjects he covered in that we were interested in was like aiming methods for traditional archers. This thing doesn't have a sight.
That's right.
Somehow you got to hit what you're pointing it at.
That's
right. So, Matt, what are some different types of aiming methods? And is that correct for me
That's
to call
right.
it aiming?
Methods. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Like we said, like PJ said, we're here at the Traditional Archery Rendezvous here, and yeah, there's a lot of different aiming methods out there. There's 100 different ways to shoot a bow. It's very individualized. That's why the passion of traditional archery is great. Is it's individual per the archer, and I classify aiming or aiming styles in 3 different categories. One is instinctive. Then you have split vision, and then a dedicated aiming method. And the dedicated aiming method is using the tip of the arrow in reference to the target to get your arrow to impact there. Split vision is you're aware of your arrow tip, but you're not really saying, I'm this far away from the target, I need to place my tip here to get it to impact there. An instinctive archer is just staring, burning a hole in the target, and allowing his muscle memory to get his arrow to impact where he wants it to go.
So for instinctive, that's just built up through repetition.
That's right. That's one of the cons to instinctive shooting, is that it takes thousands and thousands of arrows at different angles and distances to be able to get your arrow to impact there every time when a deer walks in, or if you're standing in front of a 3D target at a competition. So that's one of the downfalls. But one of the benefits of instinctive shooting, especially for the woods, is that the archer doesn't have to concern themselves with how far that animal is away from them. They can be in the moment. They can be enjoying it, getting primal with that animal, and that animal comes in. They don't have to think about 15 yards. They don't need a rangefinder. They burn a hole in the chest of that animal, and they draw back and just allow their muscle memory to take over and have that arrow impact.
Can you walk us through with
Sure.
the bail here
Yeah.
some of the different types?
I can try. So the first type is instinctive shooting. So again, it's going to be hard to demonstrate on film exactly what is going on in my brain, but an instinctive archer will either shoot split finger or 3 under, but typically their tab or their glove is touching the arrow nock as they're shooting. And all I'm doing here is I'm staring at the center of that target, I'm addressing the string, and I am just, right now, from the very point I address the string, I am burning a hole right in the center of that target. That's where I want my arrow to go. And I just concentrate, and I'm not thinking about anything. Concentrate, and you shoot the shot. That's instinctive archery.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And it hit. I mean, I hope you're aiming at the center there.
I was. That was good. That was the first instinctive shot I've shot in about 3 years, so I was a little nervous taking that shot, actually.
Gotcha. So, so the next one was split vision. You called it.
Yes. So split vision is very similar to what I just did there. It's an instinctive shot, and I won't demonstrate that because it's very hard to differentiate between the two. It's going to look exactly like what I just did, but instead of burning a hole in that target and only seeing the target, what a split vision archer will do is they're aware of their arrow tip, but they're not specifically saying, I'm standing 15 yards from this target, I need to place my tip here to get it to arc and impact into the center of the target. They're staring at the spot. 75 to 80% of their concentration is on the spot, on the deer's vitals, whatever they're aiming at. And as they get back to full draw, they're kind of using the tip of their arrow to help with their alignment, get them into the general area, but for the most part, they're relying on muscle memory like an instinctive archer. So they're a blend between a hard, dedicated aimer and an instinctive archer.
Okay, so then the last one, hard, dedicated aiming. Is that and actually, which do you do? Is that what you do?
I do. I'm a hard, dedicated aimer. And so there's a couple different ways to shoot a bow, and that's just the method of addressing the string and how you go about getting your arrow to arc into the target. There's a string walker, and a string walker will, depending on the distance away from the target, their tab will be a different distance down below the arrow. And we covered this pretty in detail in the film, The Push. But what we do here is a string walker will address the string against the nock, and if I want to shoot 15 yards, my 15-yard crawl, and a crawl is whenever you crawl down the string, you place your thumb here, which there might be a mark on your tab, and you crawl down the string, and a string walker will place the tip of the arrow right where he wants the arrow to go, draw back, and execute the shot. Now, the nice thing about that is no matter if I'm standing at 10 yards or I'm standing at 30 yards, my sight picture is the same, because my 30-yard crawl might be up here, but I'm still sticking the tip of my arrow in the center of the target. And what I'm doing is I'm pitching the arrow. I'm pitching the launch angle of the arrow as it leaves my bow by crawling down the string and changing the relationship of the arrow to my eye. In a gap shooter, using a hard dedicated aiming method, will address the string, usually 3 under, and they'll just stare at the spot they want to hit. They'll draw back, and depending on the distance away from the target, their tip will either be on the spot they want to hit or somewhere below it. And that's what a gap shooter will do. So the gap there is the distance your arrow tip is below the point of impact where you want to go. And that's called setting a gap.
And which do you do of those hard aiming?
So I actually blend the two. I use for hunting, so for competition I use string walking, a hard string walking method, but for hunting you'll see I have a fixed crawl here. So what I do is, this is my 25-yard fixed crawl. And a 25-yard fixed crawl, so in the woods, if it's dark out, I can't see my tab and I can't make a good accurate crawl for if the deer's at 20 yards. And also, if the deer's at 20 yards and he's coming through a travel corridor, I might look down at my tab and make my 20-yard crawl, and he might be standing at 15 yards now because he moved. And now I have to reset and do it again. So a way to get around that is to come up with a 25-yard fixed crawl. So now in the woods, a deer's approaching, I stick my tab right against that knock, and anything under 25 yards, I'm just gap shooting from there.
You're going to show us now your fixed crawl, and we're at what? I don't even know what distance this is, maybe 10 yards?
Yep, 10 to 12 yards right now. And yeah, my fixed crawl, this is my 25-yard fixed crawl. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically gap shooting. So I'm not at 25 yards, so I need to put the tip of my arrow below the target. And at this distance, it's about 8 inches. So I'm going to draw back, address the string at my fixed crawl knocking point. I'm going to draw back and anchor like I normally do. I'm going to close my left eye, stick the tip of the arrow about 8 inches below the target, and hopefully my arrow arcs in and hits its mark.
Good shot, right on the money.
Thank you.
So I guess it's best for someone to pick one and stick with that, or is that best?
If you're a dedicated aimer, it's probably best that you stick with being a dedicated aimer. If you're a split vision archer, continue to practice that, practice your craft, and the same with an instinctive shooter. I do change between, if I'm shooting my competition rig in an IBO competition, I am string walking. It's very accurate. I judge the yardage very well. 27 yards, I'll go to my 27-yard crawl. But for hunting, the downfalls like we mentioned a little bit earlier, and so I use a fixed crawl in the woods. But both methods are using the tip of my arrow in relationship to the target.
Different methods for aiming traditional archery. If you got any questions, you can check us out at lancasterarchery.com.